Hey everyone! Welcome to Update X24H, your go-to channel for the latest news, hottest dramas, breaking stories, and all the buzz from the world of entertainment. We're here to keep you updated, entertained, and always in the loop. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing family, because here at Update X24H, we bring you the news that matters, the drama you love, and the stories you can't miss. Thanks for being part of our community. Let's stay connected, stay updated, and keep the good vibes rolling. What we do know is simpler, smaller, and more human than the storm of speculation that surrounds it. Menglong was widely regarded as gentle and diligent, an artist who seemed to move softly through a very loud industry. After news of his passing, people did what people always do when words feel inadequate. They gathered. They left messages, lit candles, edited clips, and stitched together fragments of performances that once made them smile. Across languages and time zones, you could sense the same instinct pulsing through the noise. Remember him kindly and ask for clarity without causing harm. We know that tributes appeared from colleagues and fans, some brief and understated, some openly grieving. We know that communities formed, not to fight each other, but to steady one another. Translating posts, archiving public moments, and creating soft places online where grief could land. We know that petitions were shared as a way to channel helplessness into a call for transparency. We know that discussions about artists' welfare and duty of care resurfaced, not because argument is fashionable, but because loss makes the practical questions unavoidable. How do we protect the people who bring us stories? We also know the limits. Much of what circulates is rumor, interpretation, or the understandable attempt to fit stray pieces into a complete picture. Here, humility matters. The facts we can name should be named. The uncertainties should remain marked as uncertainties. That is not timidity, it is respect. For the living with families to protect, and for the dead whose memory asks us to be careful with our claims. Most of all, we know the shape of the feeling that remains. It is the quiet admiration for someone who worked hard and avoided spectacle. It is the ache of unfinished sentences and the kindness of strangers in the comments. It is the decision, made again and again, to choose empathy over outrage, patience over haste, and dignity over spectacle. If there are answers ahead, let them arrive through lawful open channels. Until then, what we do know is enough to guide our posture. Remember well, speak gently, ask clearly, and refuse to harm in the name of truth. Not long after Menglong's death was announced, viewers began to notice something that felt almost as unsettling as the news itself. The silence did not arrive naturally, it seemed to be arranged. Posts vanished, timelines thinned out, and people claimed that tributes they had just written were suddenly unavailable to share. Whether every detail of those reports is accurate or not, the pattern that many described created a powerful emotional tension. On one side, a genuine human instinct to speak, to grieve, to ask what happened. On the other, a growing sense that speaking too loudly, or even naming him too directly, might carry consequences. Curiosity, the simple desire to understand, found itself standing in the shadow of fear. For many fans, especially those outside China, this experience felt both distant and deeply personal. They watched accounts complain that memorial posts were limited, or that certain keywords triggered restrictions. They saw screenshots and secondhand summaries instead of open discussion. Even when such claims cannot be independently verified, the emotional effect is real. People begin to feel that truth is something you must chase through corridors, not something that can be placed calmly on the table. The more that content appears to be pushed down, the more the mind leans in and whispers, "What is so dangerous about this story that it needs to be hidden?" And yet, there is a cost to that whisper. In environments where real name registration and digital traceability are the norm, ordinary users are forced to weigh their longing for answers against the risk of being noticed. What began as curiosity becomes a quiet calculation. Do I post this? Do I share that? It is in this fragile space that rumors thrive, because when people are afraid to speak plainly, they start to speak sideways. For a community that simply wants to honor an actor and seek clarity, the censorship wave, real or perceived, turns mourning into a maze, and makes the pursuit of truth feel like an act of courage rather than a basic right. In every story about fame, there is a point where the camera turns off but the imagination keeps rolling. In Menglong's case, that off-camera space has been filled with unsettling rumors. Whispers of injuries, tales of long days followed by long nights, claims that makeup was not just an art but a shield. None of us watching from the outside can verify those details with certainty, and it is important to admit that. Yet the very existence of these stories tells us something raw about how people see him. They do not picture a star made of marble. They picture a human being whose body and mind may have carried more than his smile ever revealed. This is where rumor and empathy collide. The safest response to unproven claims would be to ignore them entirely. But for many fans, the rumors are less about the exact bruises or scars and more about a feeling. The intuition that behind the composed performances stood someone who might have been quietly enduring. They replay interviews, notice the occasional tired gaze, remember how often he wore a mask or a hat, and their hearts fill in the gaps with concern. Even if some details are exaggerated or wrong, the emotion underneath is sincere. It is the instinct that says, if he was suffering, I wish someone had protected him. At the same time, care demands restraint. There is a thin line between honoring a person's pain and turning it into spectacle. Sharing graphic descriptions or unverified photos can easily cross that line, especially when family, colleagues, and crew are still alive, still grieving, still trying to work. Ethical storytelling means asking hard questions before we hit post. Does this help us understand the need for better protections in the industry, or does it simply invite morbid curiosity? Does this honor his dignity or strip it away? Perhaps the most respectful way to hold these rumors is to let them redirect our gaze from the drama of injury to the seriousness of responsibility. Instead of debating every alleged mark on his skin, we can talk about working conditions, mental health support, realistic schedules, and the culture that makes it difficult for artists to say no without fear. We may never know exactly what Menglong lived through behind the spotlight, but we can choose to let the concern that surrounds him become a force for gentler expectations, kinder fandoms, and safer environments for those who are still here. Around Menglong's story, another layer has grown. Not made of documents or official statements, but of visions, readings, and spiritual claims. Some psychics and storytellers speak of him as if his path were mapped out long before his first audition, describing contracts that bind the soul, hidden forces feeding on human pain, and a destiny written in shadows. For some viewers, especially those who already feel that the world is ruled by powers beyond their control, these narratives are strangely comforting. They make chaos feel choreographed. They say, there was a plan, even if that plan is frightening. In a world where hard facts seem scarce, it can feel easier to believe in a hidden script than in the blunt unfairness of chance and human failure. But this is also where we have to be careful with ourselves and with each other. When grief is fresh, the imagination is tender. We reach for stories that make emotional sense, even if they are not supported by evidence. If we are not cautious, we may start to treat symbolic language as literal truth, and private belief as public fact. That can quietly shift attention away from practical questions like contracts, working conditions, and mental health support, towards a realm where nothing can be checked and no one can be held accountable. It may also deepen fear in those who are already anxious or vulnerable, turning a real person's tragedy into the seed of a new mythology. Listening without losing ourselves means allowing space for spiritual reflection, for faith, for personal rituals of mourning, while still naming these accounts for what they are. Interpretations, not proofs. We can say, this is how some people try to make sense of loss, without insisting that everyone accept it as reality. In doing so, we honor both the ache that seeks meaning and the responsibility to stay grounded, so that our search for comfort does not lead us further away from truth or kindness. When words, reports, and timelines fail to make sense of a loss, people often turn to ritual as a different kind of language. In Menglong's case, stories emerged of long memorial ceremonies, of prayers chanted for hours, of sudden chills in the air and clouds that seemed to form symbols in the sky. Some participants spoke of strange sounds captured on recordings, interpreted as EVP, a supposed trace of a voice reaching across the boundary between the living and the dead. Whether you believe such accounts or not, they reveal something important about the human heart. Our need to feel that love is not cut off by a final breath, that care and connection can travel further than our eyes can see. For some, these experiences offer comfort, a sense that you is at peace or still listening. For others, they remain moving metaphors rather than evidence. What matters, perhaps, is not proving whether every sound is supernatural, but noticing how people use these moments to express gratitude, regret and hope. In gathering and lighting incense, in listening to the quiet, they are trying to write a gentler ending to a story that felt brutally interrupted. The online petition for Menglong became, for many people, a way of doing something in a situation where they otherwise felt powerless. A signature is simple, almost weightless, yet as the numbers climbed into the hundreds of thousands, it began to feel like a quiet march across borders. Strangers from different countries standing in the same virtual line, all saying, "Please take this seriously. Please look again." When reports appeared that the counter was slowing, or that some submissions did not seem to register, a new emotion crept in beside the grief frustration. People wondered if their voices were reaching anyone at all. Some spoke of glitches, others of interference. Whatever the technical reality, the shared feeling was that of being held at arm's length from the answers they sought. And yet, even in that pause, there is something profound. The petition is more than a demand. It is a mirror, showing how deeply audiences care about fairness, transparency, and the well-being of those whose work they enjoy. The most meaningful response now is not to turn suspicion into attacks on individuals, but to keep directing that energy towards lawful, constructive channels. Asking for safer working environments, supporting responsible journalism, and checking on fellow fans who may be struggling. In this way, a list of names on a website becomes something larger, a living record of people choosing concern over indifference, long after the headlines have faded. In the end, the most enduring truth is how people remember Menglong. Soft-spoken, industrious, and sincere. Allegations may circulate, rumors may swell and fade, but kindness leaves evidence. In colleagues' stories, in fans' artwork, and in the way a community chooses compassion over cruelty. If answers come, let them arrive without harm. Until then, we hold to empathy, clarity, and care. Some items discussed are allegations/rumors. No definitive proof is presented unless stated otherwise. This program does not accuse identifiable individuals of crimes. It examines public conversation and audience psychology. Viewers are encouraged to verify information and avoid harassment or defamation. If this thoughtful approach resonates with you, please subscribe to Update X24H, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who values empathy over outrage. Thank you for spending time with us today. Stay kind, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next episode.